Welcome to the GSMC Financial News Podcast, the show that delves into the ups and downs of the stock market, changes in the economy, and news from the worlds of real estate and technology. From breaking news on the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, or the overseas market, to updates on the bond market, if there's money to be made, we've got you covered.
Welcome to the GSMC Financial News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Virginia Lucci, coming at you live from my house in Montgomery, Alabama, where I'm surrounded by all the fall-scented candles I could find. It's pumpkin spice latte season, y'all. Even if it's still 88 degrees around here, fall is a state of mind. I have a great show for you today. As always, we're going to start off with a word on the street. We are seeing signs of a rebound, but to what extent, I don't know. We've got my next part of my now continuing segment on TikTok. Then we're going to take a deep dive into Nikola and the short sale recommendation that was heard around the financial world. Finally, I'm going to give you my top 10 tips to make sure that you are most effective at setting boundaries with work, whether you work from your home or you're back in public. Before I continue, I'm going to give you my normal disclaimer. Don't come at me. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Things change at a moment's notice, and I am not providing financial, tax, or legal advice. If you need advice, please see a local financial advisor, tax preparer, accountant, or attorney for advice tailored to your needs. Now let's get to it. Stocks were rising Monday amid a flurry of mergers and acquisitions and signs of progress on a coronavirus vaccine. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 364 points, or 1.32% to 28,029. The S&P 500 rose 1.38%, and the NASDAQ jumped 1.68%. The street is clawing back from the S&P 500's worst week since June and the NASDAQ Composite's worst week since March. Those gains came after a slew of corporate deals were announced, lifting market sentiment. A choppy September shouldn't really come as a surprise, given that it's historically the worst month of the year for the market, according to Paul Hickey, co-founder of Bespoke Investment Group. The only thing that's new is that the market weakness came in the first half rather than the second half of the month. Hopefully in 2020, September is getting it all out of its system early, Hickey said. This optimism seems to be helping investor sentiment on Monday. The Federal Reserve's monetary policy meeting is on deck for Wednesday, which will likely echo the message of months past. Lower interest rates for longer and more monetary and fiscal intervention will be needed to get out of this crisis. This should be soothing to markets, seeing that Congress, which is back in session, hasn't really gotten anything done so far. Some of my favorites have had a really good day. Shares of DraftKings rose 12% after announcing a deal with ESPN. The stock was trading slightly negative for the session prior to the announcement. As part of the agreement, DraftKings content will be integrated into ESPN's digital offerings and studio shows, the company said in a release. DraftKings will be the exclusive provider of daily fantasy sports and a co-exclusive partner for gambling linkouts from ESPN, according to the company. In other news, Tesla shares jumped 9% on Monday as the stock started the week on a high note. The rally came on the heels of broad-based strength in the technology sector, as well as Goldman Sachs issuing optimistic comments surrounding demand from China. Shares of Tesla are still down more than 17% this month. Does that mean the tech bubble is rebounding? Look, it's way too early to tell, but there is a slight correction, so that's good. Another bright spot in the market today is Immunomedics. Shares of the cancer drug maker more than doubled on the news it will be acquired by Gilead Sciences. Oracle, the software giant, popped on news that it was picked up by TikTok parent ByteDance to be the U.S. partner for the popular social video app. And we'll do more on this in my next segment. Overstock.com did well. The online retailer surged after an analyst at Needham initiated the stock with a buy rating, noting Overstock is benefiting from external and internal factors that are driving acceleration in revenue growth and market share gains. NVIDIA made headlines Monday after it announced it had reached an agreement to acquire ARM Holdings from the British chip designer's Japanese parent, SoftBank, for $40 million. NVIDIA, the computer graphics chip company, will pay $21.5 billion in stock and $12 billion in cash for ARM. SoftBank also may receive up to $5 billion in cash or stock if ARM hits certain financial performance targets. NVIDIA also will issue $1.5 billion in stock to ARM employees. Under the deal, SoftBank will have an ownership stake in NVIDIA of under 10%. SoftBank purchased UK chip designer ARM for $32 billion 4 years ago. As a result, NVIDIA shares jumped 8.51% to $527.98 in trading on Monday. SoftBank shares also rose in Tokyo, closing 9% higher. ARM's technology goes into chips powering billions of devices shipping each year, everything from smartphones to video cameras to hard drives to washing machines. It's a company with reach that's just unlike any company in the history of technology, according to NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang in an interview with Bloomberg. We're uniting NVIDIA's leading AI computing with ARM's vast ecosystem. AI is the most powerful technology force of our time and has launched a new wave of computing, Huang said in a statement. In the years ahead, trillions of computers running AI will create a new Internet of Things that is thousands of times larger than today's Internet of People. Our combination will create a company fabulously positioned for the age of AI. NVIDIA said in a press release late Sunday that the transaction will be immediately accretive to the company's non-GAAP gross margin and non-GAAP per share earnings. ARM is expected to remain headquartered in Cambridge, UK. The S&P Biotech ETF, XBI, jumped 5.12% on Monday, on pace for its best day since April 17. The gains were led by Immunomedics that we talked about before. Maranza Therapeutics is also up almost 20% on Monday. The XBI is equal weighted and therefore more influenced by some of the smaller biotechs. Meanwhile, the NASDAQ Biotech ETF IBB is cap weighted and gained 4.3% on Wednesday. So I think there's plenty of optimism as the official start of the fall is in sight. But I have a hard time reconciling this with the fact that coronavirus cases continue to grow over the weekend in nearly a dozen U.S. states, as Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's leading infectious disease expert, warns about the nation's worrying level of new infections. COVID-19 cases were growing by 5% or more, based on a weekly average to smooth out daily reporting, in 11 states as of Sunday, according to a CNBC analyst of data collected by Johns Hopkins University, which is an increase from 8 states on Friday. The states were Alaska, Arkansas, Connecticut, Delaware, Maine, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. I mean, there's absolutely no rhyme or reason to where these states are located and whether or not they've already seen a huge outbreak. It's completely random. And Wisconsin hit a record high in its average of daily new cases, reporting 1,353 new infections. That's roughly 32% increase from a week ago. Kansas and Montana both hit record highs for new deaths. And I think Kansas and Montana are two of the most sparsely populated states in the country. So everyone's at risk. Health officials say the U.S. is unlikely to return to what we would define as normal until there's a safe and effective vaccine. There are currently no U.S.-approved drugs or vaccines for the virus, though U.S. regulators have authorized treatments for emergency use for hospitalized patients. Earlier on Monday, the CEO of Pfizer, one of the frontrunners in the race for a COVID-19 vaccine, said its vaccine could be distributed to Americans before the end of the year if found to be safe and effective. There's a lot of hedging statements in that sentence right there. So if I were a betting woman, I wouldn't bet that Pfizer is going to come out with a vaccine before the end of the year. So we might be having a socially distanced Christmas. Pfizer is currently in late-stage testing and hopes to enroll up to 44,000 participants. Albert Bourla told CBS's Face the Nation on Sunday that the drug maker should have key data from its late-stage trial for the Food and Drug Administration by the end of October. If the FDA approves the vaccine, the company is then prepared to distribute hundreds of thousands of doses, he said. Even if a vaccine is approved to be distributed before the end of the year, it's likely that it's going to be in short supply. I mean, let's be realistic. The vaccine will likely require 2 doses at varying intervals. At least that's what Pfizer is developing. And states will face the logistical challenges as like getting distribution sites set up and even acquiring more needles. I mean, do we have to go in the Wayback Machine to remember when we didn't have enough masks in this country? I mean, it's going to be difficult. For now, leaders can stop new outbreaks by practicing the basics of public health and disease control. So the WHO, or World Health Organization, recommends that people wear their masks as a way to slow the spread of the virus. Scientists say that COVID-19 spreads through respiratory droplets that pass when an infected person coughs or sneezes. Studies suggest that the masks may serve as a helpful barrier to spreading infections. Agency also recommends that you wash your hands regularly, maintain your distance from others, and avoid going to crowded places. If you have a fever, cough, or have difficulty breathing, seek medical attention immediately, but call by telephone in advance if possible, and follow the directions of your local health authority. But vaccine development does continue. Eli Lilly said its rheumatoid arthritis drug, baricitinib, was effective in reducing recovery time for hospitalized COVID-19 patients when taken in a combination with Gilead's antiviral remdesivir, according to Reuters. Lilly said its drug Aluminant, when used in combination with remdesivir, cut the amount of time in the hospital by roughly 1 day versus patients who were treated with remdesivir alone, according to Reuters. AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine trial remains on hold in the United States pending a U.S. investigation into serious side effect in Britain, even as other trials of the vaccine resume, sources familiar with the deaths told Reuters. AstraZeneca on Saturday said it had restarted its trial in Britain after regulators completed their review of the serious side effect. This was the first indication that the U.S. trial will remain on hold until the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and a safety panel investigate the case. Enrollment in the company's global trials of the vaccine, which is developing with researchers at Oxford University, was put on pause on September 6th. Sources told Reuters that enrollment of new patients and other trial procedures for the pivotal U.S. trial were being rescheduled until at least midweek, and that it was not clear how long it would take for the FDA to complete their probe. Governments around the world are waiting for this vaccine to help end the pandemic. The World Health Organization has flagged AstraZeneca's as the most promising. A prolonged delay in the U.S. trial could slow access to the vaccine in the United States. An AstraZeneca spokeswoman declined to comment on when the U.S. trials would resume. She said in an email the company will continue to work with health authorities across the world, including the FDA, and be guided as to when other clinical trials can start or resume. On Capitol Hill, Democratic lawmakers launched an investigation into reports that Trump administration appointees try to interfere with coronavirus reports from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. A House subcommittee on the pandemic is requesting interviews with officials from the CDC and the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as a slew of documents citing reports showing aides to President Donald Trump sought to help him downplay the risks of coronavirus by attempting to alter, delay, and block critical scientific reports from the CDC. The probe, led by House Minority Whip Jim Clyburn, comes after Politico reported HHS communications aides pushed to review or change the CDC's report on COVID-19. So, yeah, that's interesting. Not quite surprising, but interesting. And with that, I am going to take a quick break. And when I come back, we're going to look at what's going on with TikTok. And stick around to the end of the show where I'll give you my top 10 ways to put your work aside and enjoy your downtime. So stick around.
Are you a business owner? Someone interested in the latest news that might affect your business? Then check out the GSMC Business News Podcast, a show dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning business, technology, and the stock market. Get a head start on the day as we keep you updated on the latest goings-on Wall Street, money, jobs, and technology. The GSMC Business News Podcast has you covered.
Welcome back. In our last segment, we took a look at the word on the street and found yet again it is wild and there are a lot of twists and turns in Wall Street lately. Following up on a continuing series that we've been featuring on the GSMC Financial News Podcast, there are more updates on TikTok. The Chinese owner of TikTok has chosen Oracle to be the app's technology partner. And that word partner is going to be pretty significant in just a little bit for its U.S. operations and has rejected the acquisition offer from Microsoft, according to Microsoft officials and other people involved in the negotiations. As time runs out on the executive order from President Trump threatening to ban the popular app unless American operations are sold. So we're right up on that deadline, and they've rejected Microsoft. So it's unclear whether TikTok's choice of Oracle as a technology partner would mean that Oracle would also take a majority ownership stake of the social media app. The people involved in the negotiations were not sure. Microsoft had been seen as the American technology company with the deepest pockets to actually purchase TikTok's U.S. operation from its parent company ByteDance, and with the greatest ability to address national security concerns that led to the president's order. ByteDance let us know today they would not be selling TikTok's U.S. operations to Microsoft, Microsoft said in a statement. We are confident our proposal would have been good for TikTok users while protecting national security interests. ByteDance has not commented yet. A spokesperson for Oracle did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Oracle's bid for TikTok highlights the company's public embrace of President Trump. The fast-moving series of events on Sunday came as the clock ticked down on the executive order, which said that TikTok essentially needed to strike a deal to sell its U.S. operations by September 20th or risk being blocked entirely in the United States. But sales talks had been in a holding pattern because China issued new regulations last month that would bar TikTok from transferring its technology to a foreign buyer without explicit permission from the Chinese government. And we went into that a little bit in a podcast that we did, I think it was last week, that the Chinese government kept putting up hurdles that made it almost impossible for any U.S. company to job. Any resulting deal would still be what they're calling a geopolitical piñata between the United States and China. So essentially the Chinese regulations crushed the bid by Microsoft. The software giant had said in August that it would insist on a series of protections that would essentially give it control of the computer code that TikTok uses for the American and many other English-speaking versions of the app. And I don't know if you have used TikTok before, but the algorithm is really unique among the social media giants. I don't understand how it happens, but one second I'll be looking at a video and I don't finish it, and then I'll have 3 other videos that were similar to the one I didn't finish, and then I won't see videos that I liked from before. It's interesting, and it's something that I've never seen before. Microsoft said the only way it could protect the privacy of TikTok users in the United States and prevent Beijing from using the app as a venue for disinformation was to take over the computer code and the algorithms that determine what videos are seen by the 100 million Americans who use it each month. We would have made significant changes to ensure the service met the high standards for security, privacy, online safety, and combating disinformation, Microsoft said in a statement. Oracle, one of the few Silicon Valley firms to publicly ally with the president, is the sole publicly known remaining bidder for TikTok. Oracle has said nothing publicly about what it's going to do with TikTok's underlying technology, which is written by a Chinese engineering team in Beijing, and which Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has charged is answerable to Chinese intelligence agencies. That is a major concern of American intelligence agencies, led by the National Security Agency, or NSA, and United States Cyber Command, which warned internally that whoever controls the computer code could channel or censor a range of politically sensitive information to specific users. ByteDance and TikTok have denied that they helped the Chinese government. So essentially, Oracle's partnership with ByteDance hasn't really done anything to change the underlying problem, but that remains to be seen. TikTok has become the latest flashpoint, as you know, if you're a longtime listener to the show, between the United States and China over the control of technology that affects American lives. The Trump administration has already banned the Chinese telecom giant Huawei from selling next-generation or 5G networks and equipment in the United States, citing the risk of a foreign power controlling the infrastructure on which the internet communications flow. But TikTok took the battle in new directions. For the first time, the United States was trying to stop a Chinese cultural phenomenon with an intense following among American teenagers and millennials, which carries the possibility of future influence. And as I've said a million times before, TikTok is huge in my house. My teenage stepdaughter is on TikTok all the time, gets her information on what's going on in the world, and it's really shaping her perspective. So honestly, this may sound like something to throw away, that it's not important, but it really is. If we get some disinformation or political politically driven posts. It's shaping Generation Z and younger millennials. So even if Oracle may try to close the deal, it's really unclear whether Beijing would create the new obstacles to delay the process. And, nothing is written in stone just yet. And election year politics is hanging over the negotiations. So, as always, the Trump administration's connection to this company is going to influence what comes out of the deal. Oracle's founder, Larry Ellison, hosted a fundraiser for Mr. Trump this year, and its chief executive, Safra Catz, served on the president's transition team and has frequently visited the White House. Last month, the president said he would support Oracle buying TikTok. He called Oracle a great company and said the firm, which specializes in enterprise software, could successfully run TikTok. I think that Oracle would certainly be somebody that could handle it, he said. Monday morning, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin confirmed the deal and said it would be presented to the president with a recommendation later this week. But barring a complete catastrophe, TikTok will keep operating in the United States, however weird the details are. TikTok's 1,400 U.S. employees and tens of millions of U.S. users, including those in my house, are now breathing a sigh of relief. Oracle's bid, in some ways, resembles Microsoft's original proposal because it's only serving as a technology partner and minority owner instead of a full and complete owner. But this was something that the president rejected, saying that the U.S. arm of TikTok had to be sold altogether. So I really think that politics is playing a huge role in this. Because of the relationship between Ellison and the president and Katz and the president, it's iffy. And we still don't know if China's going to even support the deal. Rules that Beijing introduced last month made TikTok's U.S. business a less attractive asset. They likened it to selling the car but not the motor. And they is the South China Morning Post, based on a person briefed on the Chinese company boardroom discussions. Chinese state news media, citing unnamed sources, said that ByteDance wouldn't sell TikTok to Oracle either, but that could refer to a complete takeover instead of a less comprehensive partnership. It's really hard to imagine that ByteDance would do anything with Oracle without Beijing's tacit approval. But we can't rule out any more twists and turns in this saga. There may be yet another installment of my continuing series on TikTok. So, and it's because I think the last minute sale was really strange in a number of ways. Because it's not a sale, and the partnership isn't really well defined. It's really vague. And is it a partnership with ByteDance, or is Oracle partnering with TikTok? And the U.S. TikTok operation? It's still really unclear what Oracle's trusted tech partner status entails. But it's really unlikely Oracle's taking over any significant operations from the U.S. TikTok offices. Microsoft would have severed American TikTok from Europe and Asia completely, but Oracle's version of the deal is going to leave that intact. U.S. TikTok will stay the same as Korean TikTok and Nigerian TikTok. It's just getting an extra babysitter. That makes it less of a sale and more like a hosting deal. It technically allows the president to say that he's solved the problem, but it really doesn't do much else. Microsoft underlined its point in its official statement announcing that it had not been chosen. we would have made significant changes to ensure the service met the highest standards for security, privacy, online safety, and combating misinformation. We look forward to seeing how the service continues. The implicit message is clear. They wanted to change TikTok to actually make it safe, and ByteDance said no. There's no indication that Oracle's partnership is going to make any of these changes, which makes it really suspect. A deal where Oracle takes over the hosting without source code and significant operational changes isn't going to address any of the major concerns. And the White House accepting this deal would demonstrate that it's a pure gift, according to Facebook's security chief, Alex Stamos. So this only addresses like a teeny tiny sliver of the problem. It just means that China can't directly take user data, but it's unlikely that it really could have before, given the app's U.S. headquarters. So Oracle's trusted partner status could include some code audits, but as long as the company isn't writing the code, it's going to be hard to stop ByteDance from smuggling in some tracking malware if it wants to. Oracle won't be rewriting TikTok's algorithm or handling moderation, so it's going to be just as easy for ByteDance to push Chinese propaganda or censor embarrassing messages. Oracle will be a contractor rather than a subsidiary, but it's not clear that will make them any less vulnerable to pressure or subterfuge. If you were concerned about TikTok before, there really isn't going to be any reason why you shouldn't still be concerned. The only winner in this, I think, is Oracle, which will get paid handsomely by TikTok for its trust partnering service and for making this whole nightmare go away. It's an anticlimactic end, but it could have been worse. The Treasury Department was really prepared to block U.S. transaction to ByteDance starting on the 20th. And that's next Sunday. And absent some kind of compromise or emergency legislation, TikTok would have become collateral damage. So what's next for Microsoft? While its bid for TikTok was a little opportunistic, the tech giant has demonstrated an openness to a big consumer-facing deal. So it will consider turning its M&A attention elsewhere. And maybe one of these similar networks like Pinterest, Spotify, and Twitter. And somebody I haven't really mentioned in this segment is Walmart. Walmart was set to partner with Microsoft. So what are they going to do? Walmart has also said that it's still interested in TikTok, which implies that it may be opening to partnering with Oracle, depending on how things shake out. So does this end the Cold War between U.S. and China? Probably not. Probably not. And just as an aside, there is another TikTok competitor that was announced on Monday. YouTube announced that YouTube Shorts, which the company described as a new way to express yourself in 15 seconds or less, will arrive at some point, allowing users to shoot short, catchy videos using nothing but their mobile phones. They can be recorded with music chosen from a large library of songs, and that's clearly meant to compete with TikTok. Shorts is just the latest TikTok competitor after Facebook also launched its own version called Instagram Reels, which similarly involved making short 15-second videos. YouTube will first launch an early beta of Shorts in India, where CNBC noted that TikTok itself had been banned. I am going to take a quick commercial break, and when I come back, we're going to talk about short sales, what they are, and we're going to look at the short sale that's been heard all around the financial world. And stick around to the end of the show when I give you my top 10, and this time I will be talking about top 10 ways to make yourself feel disconnected from work.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. In our last segment, we talked about TikTok and what's going on with the app now. Maybe we'll have another segment on it in the future. Maybe this is the end of the story. I don't know. But now we're going to look at the short sale that's been heard around the financial world. It's a story of a battle between Nikola and Hindenburg Research, and it is one of the hottest stories on the street on Monday. I think it's a great way to investigate how people make money off of a short sale, who Hindenburg Research is, and how this changed Nikola's share price. And finally, why are Nikola and Hindenburg battling? First, what is a short sale? And how can this make me money? Short selling is a fairly simple concept. An investor borrows a stock, sells the stock, and then buys the stock back to return it to the lender. Short sellers are essentially betting that the stock they sell will drop in price. If the stock does drop after selling, the short seller buys it back at a lower price and returns it to the lender. The difference between the sell price and the buy price is the profit. You're basically making money off the misfortune of another company. So, an example, if an investor thinks that Tesla stock is overvalued at $500 a share and is going to drop in price, the investor can borrow 10 shares of Tesla from their broker, who then sells it for the current market price of $500. If the stock goes down to $400, the investors could buy back the 10 shares at this price, return the shares to the broker, and net a profit of $1,000. However, if the Tesla price rises to $700, then the investor would lose $800. So you're really betting. What are the risks? Well, it's an amplified risk. When an investor buys the stock or goes long, they stand to lose only the money that they've invested. So if that investor bought one Tesla share at $500, the maximum they would lose is $500 because the stock can't drop any less than zero. In other words, the maximum value that any stock can fall is to $0. So, yeah, it's risky, but people can make a bunch of money off of this. So, that brings me to the players in the saga. First, Hindenburg. Who are they and what do they do? Founded in 2018, Hindenburg Research specializes in forensic financial research. With experience in the investment management industry that spans over a decade, they maintain a historical focus on equity, credit, and derivative analysis. According to its website, they've made serious allegations against a number of companies, most of which appear to be smaller firms. It says some of those firms or their executives have subsequently been charged with fraud by the Securities and Exchange Commission. CNN has not verified these claims, but they found them. So, good enough. So, who's Nikola? Nikola Corporation is an American company that has announced a number of concept zero-emissions vehicles since 2016 and has indicated plans to produce some of them in the future. The company is based in Phoenix, Arizona, where its research and development facility is located. It's really Tesla's soul sister. So here's where things kind of start to get a little rocky for Nikola. In October of 2019, they announced that they had some game-changing battery technology after they signed a letter of intent with a company called Zapco. But in February of 2020, Nikola formally terminated its deal with Zapco. Hindenburg said that the Zapco deal ultimately fell through when Nikola realized its battery technology was what they call vaporware, and the president of Zapco had been indicted for tax fraud. So, yeah, that does not bode well. Last Thursday, just days after a new partnership with General Motors was announced, where General Motors purchased 11% of Nikola's shares. Nikola's shares that weren't purchased by GM soared. So Hindenburg Research released a new report that accused the company of being, and I'm quoting here, an intricate fraud built on dozens of lies. In the introduction to Thursday's report, Hindenburg states that it had taken short positions on the company's stock. So they're trying to make a profit off of a reduction in the stock price, and Hindenburg's actually kind of putting their thumb on the scale to let everybody know, hey, we've got some problems with Nikola, and here's what they are. Hindenburg allegedly spoke to a former Nikola employee who said that the company's YouTube video that they released that was entitled Nikola One in Motion was produced to appear to show a Nikola truck driving down a desert road. But the video was actually of the vehicle towed to the top of the hill and then released. The video allegedly showed the truck cruising once it had accelerated from rolling down the hill. Although the company didn't specifically say that the truck was moving on its own power, that's a clear implication. Hindenburg noted that since the Zapco battery wasn't affected, Nikola planned to use GM's battery technology instead, and that's part of the reason behind the partnership with GM. Hindenburg also states that a spokesperson for PowerCell AB alleged Nikola's battery and hydrogen fuel cell claims are hot air. In fact, Hindenburg said Nikola's new partnership with GM means Nikola will be using both GM's production and fuel cell capabilities. Nikola seems to be bringing nothing to the partnership but concept design, their brand name, and up to $700 million they will be paying to GM for costs related to production, Hindenburg said. In fact, Hindenburg said one of the primary drivers behind GM's partnership with Nikola wasn't the company's technology. Instead, GM has been under pressure all year from analysts and shareholders due to the Wall Street buying in frenzy in EV story stocks like Tesla. We believe the legacy automaker simply seeks to latch General Motors' storied name onto Nikola's charismatic founder and executive chairman, Trevor Milton, Hindenburg said. He said GM may see Milton as its answer to Elon Musk. So is Nikola just another Theranos? Like Musk, Milton has been criticized for making claims that are optimistic at best. Hindenburg pointed out Milton has been forced to admit his claims that Nikola is already producing hydrogen at an 81% cost discount to peers were not true. Hindenburg also criticized Milton for appointing his brother as director of hydrogen production infrastructure at Nikola, despite him having no managerial experience. Hindenburg further claims that Nikola has intentionally hidden the fact that it uses third-party components in its vehicles, even using masking tape to hide suppliers' names. Masking tape. The short seller alleges a number of other claims made by Milton and demonstrations performed by the company have been deceptive in nature. So, in conclusion, Hindenburg compares Nikola to the blood testing technology fraud of Theranos, which was all smoke and mirrors. And they had a number of partnership deals with a number of high-profile companies. I'll probably do a segment about Theranos in a later podcast. The remarkable thing about Nikola's story is not that someone like Trevor Milton exists, but that he has managed to parlay his stories and lies into deals with some of the best manufacturers and partners in the world by claiming to own vast proprietary technology and having successfully built revolutionary products that simply didn't exist, Hindenburg said. So Milton responded. Milton called out the report in a tweet on Thursday of last week. Tens of millions of shares shorted the last day or two to slam our stock and hit job by Hindenburg, Milton said. I guess everything is fair game in war, even a hit job. I know who funded it now. Give me a few hours to put together responses to their lies. Is this all you got? Even if Hindenburg's claims that Nikola is mostly smoke and mirrors are true, short sellers have made the same claims about Tesla for years. Hindenburg may be correct in that GM sees the true value in the EV space these days is tied to branding rather than actual technology, and Milton is simply GM's answer to Musk, but that's yet to be seen. On Friday, the company announced it had hired a law firm to explore legal action against Hindenburg and said it plans to bring the matter before the Securities and Exchange Commission. But it did not provide any further details. Nikola said it would offer a more detailed rebuttal to the allegations at a later date. So Monday, Nikola struck back, most likely based on the advice of their new counsel. After shares of Nikola recovered from early losses Monday, the electric vehicle startup disputed the fraud claims made last week. In a statement Monday, the company said there were dozens of inaccurate allegations in the report and that it outlined specific examples. But they're not disputing one of Hindenburg's largest claims, that it staged the video showing a truck that appeared to be functional but wasn't. As well as the claims the truck was fully functional. So by Monday afternoon, Nikola's shares were up about 5%. They closed Friday at $32.13, bringing its market capitalization to $11.6 billion after a 14.5% drop. Regarding the video, Nikola said it, quote, never stated the truck was driving under its own propulsion in the video, although the truck was designed to do just that, end quote. But there were no disclaimers that the truck wasn't functioning on its own, so that's fairly deceptive in my opinion. The company said that investors at the time knew the capabilities of the prototype vehicle, calling the three-year-old video irrelevant except for the fact that the short seller is trying to use it for its main thesis. The company said it ultimately decided not to invest additional resources to complete the vehicle. Instead, it shifted resources to another pickup known as the Nikola 2, which the company has demonstrated is self-propelled. In other instances, Nikola said Hindenburg mischaracterized a quote from an employee of auto supplier Bosch, a partner of the company, misrepresented comments from Milton about potential advancement in the company's battery technology, and falsely linked the departure of a chief financial officer to refunding deposits for first-generation versions of the company's semi-trucks. Nicola did not address other claims outlined by Hindenburg. Those allegations included alleged misrepresentation of capabilities of the Nikola 1 during the vehicle's unveiling in 2017 and claims that the company's headquarters was off the grid. Hindenburg founder Nathan Anderson said the firm finds Nikola's statement on Monday completely inadequate. Nikola had previously promised a point-by-point rebuttal to our report, and this morning's press release did not deliver on that promise, Anderson said in an email to CNBC. In the few areas where the company did respond, it largely confirmed our findings or simply raised new unanswered questions. We will be issuing a detailed response. In a tweet Monday morning, Milton said the company is focused on delivering something analysts such as Wedbush's Daniel Ives have been advising Nikola investors on doing. So that's an interesting case, and I will be following it to see exactly what happens. I'm going to take another quick break, and when I come back, I am going to give you my top 10. And this time, our top 10 is going to be how to stay focused and how to separate yourself from work. So stay tuned.
Do you work in the world of marketing and advertising? Are you a media buyer or the owner of an agency? Have you been looking for a podcast to help stay on top of all the goings on of those worlds? The GSMC Marketing News Podcast is dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning marketing and advertising. Get the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast has you covered, whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand.
Welcome back. In my last segment, we talked about short sales and what effect that can really have on a company and what happens when research groups make some pretty heavy allegations against another company. And again, I'm going to be keeping track of this because I think this is an interesting story. But we're going to shift gears a little bit. And in my top 10, we're going to talk about something that is good self-care, and that's going to be creating boundaries. Fusion of work, life, and school and at-home togetherness is really taking a toll on all of us. Our work days are longer, with the break normally found in a commute. No matter how short, it is just gone. And, the things I would do on my commute, or, I'd listen to podcasts like the GSMC Financial News Podcast, or I'd listen to Audible books, and I'd learn something. And that time is gone now. So I don't have that mental time to prepare. I just wake up, take my shower, and change rooms, basically. I'm also a working mother, and I have to take care of the house, too. So while I'm working on my financial planning, I'm also making sure the laundry's done, taking care of the dog and the cats, and, it's a problem that I didn't have to face before that is really apparent. And unless we're really deliberate about it, it can be easy to let our boundaries slip away. Healthy boundaries are essential to any relationship, including the ones you have at work. Your personal limits are an expression of your values. They let others know what you care about and how you define acceptable and unacceptable behavior. It seems simple enough, but for many of us, setting boundaries and enforcing them is challenging. And I know that I've really struggled with this throughout my career, especially when I was practicing law. Of course, in your professional life, there's the extra factor of how to meet your personal needs without putting your paycheck at risk. Responding to a boss or a client who oversteps can be more stressful than dealing with a friend or a partner where you feel like you're on equal footing. Meanwhile, many of us, like me, we're still working remotely, and working from home can be as challenging as it is comfortable. There's no rushing out the door, there's no fighting traffic, but I kind of feel like I'm always at work. And that's really exhausting and stressful. When your office is also your home, it can be difficult to stay productive and focused, as well as separate yourself from work at the end of the day. Maintaining a successful work-life balance when it comes to working from home requires discipline and patience. According to Bethany Blankenheim, LPC, a therapist at In-Depth Therapy, she suggests establishing a number of boundaries in order to protect yourself emotionally and set yourself up for success. With that in mind, here are my top 10 tips for setting boundaries that can keep you from becoming overwhelmed or inefficient. Number 1 is to maintain a schedule. Setting your hours of availability and sticking with them is imperative. Tell those you work with what your specific working hours are, and don't deviate from your schedule. This sets the expectation for your employees and coworkers as to when you're available to them. Relying on a strict schedule not only helps you maintain boundaries with colleagues, but with your family as well, as it lets them know when they have access to you. Plus, your brain will appreciate the balance between when it needs to work and when it needs to relax or spend time with the family. And that I'm really bad at that one. Number 2 is take a lunch break. And even when I was working in an office, I wasn't the best at taking lunch breaks. And even though I really felt like it was important and it refreshes you, don't expect yourself to work for 8 hours straight. You need a break. A survey from Torque, a brand from the global health and hygiene company Essity, revealed that those who take daily lunch breaks are happier and more efficient at work. Taking short breaks throughout the day will help you return to work with a renewed focus. Use this time to eat away from your workspace. If you can, go for a walk too, since research shows it can improve both your mood and cognitive performance. And number 3 is establish a dedicated workspace. This doesn't necessarily have to be a formal office. It can be, but if it's just a desk in your bedroom or living room, that works too. What's important here is that the space is only used for working. This way your brain knows when it's time to work and when it's time to relax at home. So try not to make it your bed where you're supposed to sleep, because then it's really hard to turn off your mind. It also sets a boundary for your family members or others with whom you share your home, letting them know when you're at your workspace, you're working, and when you're not, you're available. At number 4. Oops. Dress for work. You might want to wear pajamas all day, and that's great. It's comfortable, but again, like working off of your bed, it blurs the line between when you're working and when you're relaxed. So maintain your same routine of waking up at the same time each day and getting ready just like you would if you were going to the office. You can dress more casually. You don't have to wear sweats on the bottom and a button-up shirt on the top. Do your makeup if you are so inclined. Brush your hair right. It helps. And if you wear the clothing that you associate with relaxation, it makes it difficult to achieve that healthy balance. At number 5, clock out at the end of the day. It's crucial to adhere to this boundary in order to maintain your emotional well-being and achieve a healthy work life. Shut down your computer, turn off your phone, and leave your workspace until the following day. This is the time for you to leave work and enjoy your family. Do whatever helps you feel recharged if you live alone or with roommates. When work hours are over, be careful not to fall into the trap of seemingly easy tasks like checking your voicemail or responding to email. Completely step out of work. This is essential for your mental health and lets your family know they have your undivided attention. At number 6, set boundaries for yourself. It's easier for the lines to blur when you're working from home, using your personal cell phone, your home computer. So understand the difference between the boundaries and barriers. Boundaries and barriers are the line that divides my home state of Alabama with the state of Mississippi. It's an imaginary line, but it separates things in a healthy way. Well, I don't know if it's healthy, but Alabama's always happy that Mississippi exists. So, Mississippi State Police know that they're not responsible for things that happen on the Alabama border, on the other side of the Alabama border, and vice versa. So this is a barrier, not a boundary. It cuts off communication. It cuts off negotiation. It makes it clear that you are not on the same team. On the other hand, people can stand on their own side of a boundary and have a conversation. They can shake hands over the line. They can offer to come over the line to help in a pinch. Each party takes responsibility for what's on their side of the boundary, and they respect the line, but it's in the service of working together, not avoiding each other. So tip number 7 is figure out how you work best with boundaries. Ultimately, they're about helping you to get the work you need done. You can't set effective boundaries with others if you can't articulate the best way to work yourself. So step back and identify what's the most important work you are responsible for. What challenges are you up against? What's most likely to get in the way of doing your best work? What information do you need in order to do your best work? When do you need uninterrupted time in order to do your best work? When is the most disruptive time to be interrupted? What's your optimal work style? When do you do your clearest thinking? When are you best able to get into a flow? In my current position, I set up a calendar, and I've got everything on it, from taking my stepdaughter to school to making sure I go to my morning meetings, and when I have time for calling clients, when I have time for prospecting clients. It's all on my calendar, so I know what I'm responsible for and what I need to do. I also know exactly when I'm at my clearest, which is probably mid-afternoon, early to mid-afternoon. So I put my harder tasks then. I also know I'm not going to be interrupted because my stepdaughter doesn't come home from school until 3. My husband doesn't come home from his office until 5. So I've got a good chunk of time there when I'm at my optimal and that I'm not interrupted. And I schedule it. So it's really important to set those boundaries. An incredibly effective type of boundary is to set the expectation for when you will respond to inbound communication and when you just won't. If you're bombarded all day with requests and questions, it's helpful to set a boundary up, for lack of a better word. For example, while I'm recording my podcast, I'm not responding to emails from work. Those are going to wait until after we're done here. So, you've got a communication channel you can commit to checking and responding a couple times a day or less. when you have time to think about them. So you figure out what the best way to people to ask things of you, what's the right way for people to get a hold of you in an emergency, if something that is urgent, should they text you with urgent? Should they call you? Is it okay for someone to spring a real-time conversation on you? Or do you want non-emergency conversations to give you some kind of warning? So once you're clear on this, before you try to establish these boundaries with anyone, you have to learn the same kinds of things about your teammates. Number 9, put yourself in your teammates' shoes and figure out what they need to succeed. Seeking to understand what your teammates are up against doesn't just help you learn how to deal with them. It lets them know that you care. This will make it easier for them to understand when you let them know where your optimal work boundaries are. It pays to personally ask the people you work with, what's the most important work that you're responsible for? What challenges are you up for? What information do you need in order for you to do your best work? And, that really makes you feel like you're part of a team. And only once you've understood your teammates can you really work best with them. It's really good for you. And number 10, communicate your boundaries in terms of agreements for the greater good. Setting boundaries is about making clear what you agree to be responsible for and what you expect out of others in order to do so. The principle is this: if you're going to take responsibility for your work and its contribution to the greater good, then you need to be in control of the terms of your work. When you communicate your boundaries with people, it's helpful to frame them in terms of your desire for the greater good, the team's overall success. It's easier for colleagues to hear the word no when it's framed by the big picture for the team. And it's best to set boundaries as if-then agreements. In other words, boundaries are what you promise to do if the other party agrees to what you ask. So if you promise to only call me without a warning if it's an emergency, then I promise to always pick up. Unless I'm dealing with another emergency, which in that case I will call you back. But you get a sense of what people expect of you. And that's going to set you at ease because you're not always going to be anxious that, if 7 o'clock while you're eating dinner, Sally calls you and you look at it and you think, do I need to pick this up? Do I not need to pick this up? And, you understand what her expectations are of you. You understand she understands what your expectations are of her. So, I think that's a good way to really establish your at-home routine. And it's kind of scary at first, but if you frame things in terms of the greater goods, it's going to be impossible to argue with you about boundaries. Even a boss will respect that, but probably a good boss and not a bad boss like some of the bosses I've had in the past. So we've reached the end of my show, and I thank you for listening to the GSMC Financial News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Find us on your favorite podcast app and give us a 5-star review, because that will really help me. If you want to chat with me, you can find me on Twitter at GSMC Financial News. And if you have any questions and want to chat, just hit me up or DM me. There's a lot of good information on our Twitter feed. So hope to see you there. And in this age of Corona, do me a favor and keep washing your hands, keep social distancing, and wear a mask. See ya.
You've been listening to the GSMC Financial News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type GSMC into your favorite podcast app to find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, From sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news. Please subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed today's podcast.